Okay, so now we're going to do a review of the respiratory anatomy, starting at the larynx, which is this structure here. The larynx is covered by two different types of cartilage, so if you start up at the hyoid bone, which is difficult to see, but you can feel it right up here, the cartilage right underneath it on either side, which kind of comes down like this, is the thyroid cartilage. Under that is the cricoid cartilage, and then you see the start to the cartilaginous rings of the trachea. This entire tube is the trachea, and it goes all the way down where it starts branching off into the lungs. Before we get into those structures, we have the thyroid gland and the parathyroid gland, which lie on both sides of the trachea. There is not currently one on this side, but this is the thyroid gland here. And then the parathyroid gland is just a very tiny structure that lies right on top of the thyroid here. Next we have the bronchi. So we're going to flip this backwards so we can see where the trachea enters the lungs. So if you can see, move this out of the way. Here and here, there's a like a separation. That is the primary bronchi. So from the trachea, you have the bronchi, or primary bronchi. And then the secondary bronchi, you can see here really well. This very thin structure here. Those will lead to the bronchioles, which we can't see, but they're even like smaller like tubule structures, and then those lead into the alveoli. So one more time, we have the primary bronchi coming straight from the trachea, and then those branching off into the secondary bronchi here. Okay. Next we have the lobes of the lungs. So we have the left and the right. It's always the cat's left or the cat's right. So these are the left lobes. We have the left cranial lobe, the left cranial caudal lobe, and the left caudal lobe. And on the right side, we have the right cranial lobe, the right middle lobe, and the right caudal lobe. In between the two, we have an additional lobe, which is called the accessory lobe. Two more structures that we want to discuss are the thymus gland, which unfortunately was dissected out, so we can't see it, and the heart, which is here. Oftentimes, or every time, the heart is encased in pericardium, specifically parietal and visceral, but when we do the dissection, you take off the parietal pericardium, and oftentimes the thymus gland goes with it. Right now there is still visceral pericardium surrounding it, so just know the difference between parietal and visceral pericardium. One is much thicker and one is very, very thin layer. You almost can't differentiate the visceral from the actual organ itself. And that's the respiratory anatomy.